There's something strange about living on a planet this huge, a world filled with languages, deserts, oceans, cultures, and billions of people, and yet spending most of our lives trapped inside one tiny dot on the map. We grow up walking the same old streets, seeing the same familiar faces, carrying last names we never chose. And somehow, the world expects all of this to stay the same, as if the place that first received us should also be the place where our story ends. But life doesn't breathe well inside expectations like these. At some point, sooner for some, later for others, almost everyone feels a strange, persistent urge to leave everything behind. It's not a weak impulse, not a passing idea. It's a quiet earthquake inside the chest, a vibration that refuses to calm down. A silent sentence that says, go, start over, disappear for a while, replace everything you know. Where does this desire come from? Is it running away? Is it courage? Is it desperation? Or is it maybe one of the most honest feelings a human being can ever have? Let's go deeper, because almost everyone has felt, at least once, the desire to shove some clothes into a backpack and get on the first bus going anywhere without looking back. Sometimes the reason is obvious: a relationship that rotted from the inside, a string of failures that feels bigger than you, a city that shrank until it could no longer hold your questions, or a routine that no longer speaks the same language as your soul. Other times, the feeling arrives without a reason. It shows up like an emptiness, a formless restlessness. You look at your life and think, nothing is exactly wrong, but nothing is breathing right either. Psychology has many names for this impulse. Some call it the instinct of renewal, others call it environmental fatigue. There's even a theory suggesting that humans, despite imagining they're stable creatures, are actually shaped by movement more than anything. Our ancient brains learned to live by walking, migrating, exploring. Staying still in some strange way goes against our internal architecture. Some say we are a species that lives in fixed houses but carries a nomadic soul. Others say this urge to leave is more human than paying taxes, that wandering is a kind of vocation. Many people meet this urge precisely when they're in ruins. I have felt it too, more than once. A depressive period, a breakup that drained every bit of meaning from the calendar, the feeling of walking in circles inside an environment that only reminded me of my failures. Anyone who goes through this knows the sensation. The entire city becomes a living archive of what went wrong. Every street corner is a bad memory. Every cafe is tied to some moment you'd rather erase. Every person you meet carries a piece of a past you don't want to touch anymore. And then the thought appears, if I change my surroundings, maybe I'll change too. If I disappear for a while, maybe I'll finally find myself again. Science calls this the rupture heuristic, the idea that a drastic shift in environment can activate the feeling of a new beginning. It's like hitting a reset button in the brain. Of course, the reset isn't perfect, because no matter where we go, we take someone with us, ourselves. But that doesn't make the desire invalid, it makes it human. There is a quiet logic behind wanting to leave. When life becomes stagnant, movement becomes salvation. When pain keeps repeating, distance becomes relief. When the past gets too heavy, geography becomes anesthesia. And even though we know logically that changing places doesn't magically change who we are, there is something psychologically powerful about entering a world where nothing carries our history. New streets, new routines, new faces that don't know our mistakes or our past. Social psychology calls this narrative freedom, the idea that how others see us shapes how we see ourselves. When we're surrounded by the same people with the same expectations and the same memories about who we are, our identity freezes. It gets stuck. Changing places gives us back the freedom to rewrite ourselves from zero. It's not just escape, it's reconstruction. Stoic writers like Seneca once said that travel cures nothing because the mind travels with us. And he was partly right. You cannot cross an ocean to escape who you are. But Seneca lived in a world with no internet, no massive cities, no constant sensory overload, no hyperspeed capitalism. Today we live inside a huge artificial maze. Sometimes, changing environments isn't running away. It's biological recalibration. Neuroscience shows that the brain responds to new places with increased dopamine. Novelty wakes up our sense of possibility. Movement creates new neural pathways, literally rewiring the mind. So yes, leaving doesn't cure everything, but it can loosen the rusty screws of the soul. There's also the philosophical side. Sartre said, "We are condemned to be free." Beauvoir said, "Life only gains meaning when we build that meaning ourselves." Seen through this lens, leaving everything behind is not an escape, it's an act of self-assertion. It's you saying, "I decide where my story goes." It's tearing up the script handed to you and writing your own. And here's the part most people are too afraid to admit. Sometimes, staying is the real act of cowardice. Staying inside the bubble, staying inside the smaller version of yourself, staying because it's safe, staying because others expect you to. Leaving in that sense is a radical act of freedom. It's reclaiming authorship over your own life. It's not about happiness, it's about authenticity. As children, we fantasize about crossing worlds, rockets, jungles, pirate ships. People call it imagination, but maybe it's actually rehearsal. Maybe the brain is practicing what evolution carved into us: movement, exploration, expansion. Maybe the urge to leave isn't a break from who we are, maybe it's a return. So is it right to leave? There's no universal answer, but there is a question worth everything. Are you leaving to run away from who you are, or to discover who you could be? If the answer is the second one, then the world is already opening its doors for you. If it's the first one, that's okay too. Sometimes escape is a form of survival. No one comes into this world fully prepared to face everything. The truth is, the desire to drop everything and go is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of clarity, of seeing that life is not a prison, that the world is huge, and that you have the right to experience more than the small place where you happen to be born. Maybe none of us were made to stay in the same soil forever. Maybe the urge to leave is proof that we are still alive. And maybe that feeling you carry in your chest, the one that whispers "go," is your truest self trying to surface. There's an example that perfectly captures this urge to leave everything behind, and it has nothing to do with cowardice. It's about clarity. Henry David Thoreau. He didn't just imagine going away, he did it. He left Concord, Massachusetts, and lived alone for 2 years and 2 months in a small cabin by Walden Pond. He didn't take luxury, company, or comfort. He took only his restlessness and a physical desire to exist far from the noise of society. People often describe his experiment as minimalism, but that word is too shallow. Thoreau wasn't looking for a simple life, he was looking for an essential life. There is a big difference. He believed society creates layers of noise that hide who we really are: excess work, mechanical hurry, endless consumption, inherited responsibilities. All of these act like a veil over our consciousness. To see life clearly, Thoreau thought we must first silence everything that is not life. And he meant it literally. The cabin wasn't a metaphor, it was a cut. Modern psychology calls what he did social sensory deprivation, a deep removal from familiar environments so the brain can reorganize itself without intrusive stimulation. Today, we know that prolonged silence has measurable effects on cognition. It increases neuroplasticity, strengthens focus, and reveals inner patterns that normally stay buried beneath daily routine. Thoreau didn't have neuroscience, but he discovered all of this through experience. He realized that when life is reduced to its essentials, it confronts us with questions we avoid. Who am I when no one calls my name? What remains of me when the world demands nothing? What truly matters when life stops being a race and becomes presence? These are violent questions, questions that break illusions, and that's exactly why so many people fear silence. In silence, the echo of our own truth appears. Thoreau wasn't escaping society, he was escaping numbness. His withdrawal from people wasn't avoidance, it was surgery. A deliberate act of cutting away everything excessive, a radical gesture of honesty. He wanted to be someone who lives by choice, not by automatic drift. When he wrote that most people live lives of quiet desperation, he wasn't being poetic, he was describing what he saw when he observed ordinary life too closely. Quiet desperation is exactly that. Being trapped in places, routines, and identities we didn't choose but carry as if they were fate. Thoreau decided to break that fate.
He chose to leave everything behind to hear his own soul without interference. But the most important part is this: he came back. After 2 years, he returned to the city, and that detail matters more than people think. He didn't stay isolated forever, because solitude wasn't the goal, it was the instrument. For Thoreau, leaving wasn't about rejecting the world, it was tuning it, sharpening perception, recovering meaning, purifying the way he looked at life. He proved that leaving doesn't have to be permanent. Sometimes leaving is a dive, sometimes a pause, sometimes the only way to keep living without betraying yourself. Modern life is louder, faster, and more overstimulating than anything Thoreau could have imagined. If he already sensed the invisible chains in the 19th century, imagine what he would see now. If he were alive today, people would likely call him strange, antisocial, dramatic. But he was simply honest. Honest enough to admit that ordinary life, when lived without questioning, becomes an automatic ritual, almost dead. He left everything behind not to escape life, but to recover its intensity. And maybe this is the deepest reason behind our urge to leave. We don't want to run away, we want to return. Return to what feels real. Return to what feels alive. Return to what is ours before the world shapes us too tightly to remember who we are. There's something important that often gets ignored when we talk about the desire to leave everything behind. People assume it always comes from weakness, from fear, from being unable to handle life. But many times it comes from the opposite, from seeing life too clearly. Wanting to leave can be a sign that you no longer accept living on autopilot, repeating patterns that were handed to you, playing roles you never chose. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's the moment your inner voice gets loud enough to be heard. And that voice says, there must be more than this. From childhood, we're trained to accept a narrow script. Study, work, settle, repeat. Stay where you're placed. Don't ask too many questions. Don't disturb the structure. But that structure crushes something essential in us. Human beings aren't built to be static. Our minds evolved through movement, exploration, danger, curiosity. Yet modern life asks us to sit still, obey schedules, and accept repetition as meaning. So of course something inside us protests. Of course we feel the pressure building. Of course the soul whispers, go. It's not madness, it's memory, ancient memory. A reminder that we are not machines programmed for routine, but creatures shaped by horizons and unknown places. And when life becomes too tight, too predictable, too scripted, that ancient part of us wakes up. Sometimes the urge to leave comes slowly, like a soft discomfort that grows over months or years. Other times it hits suddenly, as if a crack opens inside you and everything that was held back rushes forward at once. You look around and realize you don't belong in the life you built. Not because it's wrong, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself who built it. Outgrowing a life is one of the most painful forms of growth. It's not like outgrowing clothes, it's like outgrowing a skin. And the moment you notice the tightness, the moment you feel the suffocation, pretending becomes impossible. That's when the urge to leave becomes almost physical. It's not an idea. It's a pressure in the chest, a weight behind the ribs, a constant restlessness that makes routine unbearable. And strangely, the more you try to stay, the heavier it gets. The world around you begins to feel artificial. Conversations feel rehearsed. Your habits feel mechanical. Even your own name feels like something someone else chose. This is what psychologists call identity fatigue. Not depression, not crisis, but exhaustion with the self you've been performing. When identity becomes a costume, leaving becomes liberation. We often think of leaving as abandoning others, but most of the time it's abandoning the mask we have been forced to wear. And there's courage in that, deep courage, because staying where you no longer belong is a slow form of dying. People can live entire lives in that quiet death, smiling, working, pretending, but deep down carrying the weight of everything they never dared to try. That's why the desire to leave is not always destructive. Sometimes it's the first sign that something inside you wants to live again. The first spark, the first breath after being underwater for too long. The first moment of honesty after years of silence. And honesty is dangerous It disrupts everything. It forces choices. It demands movement. The truth is, most people don't leave because they lack clarity. They stay because they lack permission. They wait for the world to say, "You can go now." But the world never says that. The world benefits from your stability, not your transformation. That's why the call to leave feels so internal, so solitary, so personal. It's not society granting permission, it's your own soul demanding freedom. And that demand scares people, not because leaving is wrong, but because it reveals how fragile the structures of our lives really are. How much of who we are is built on convenience, habit, and fear. How easily everything could be different if we allowed ourselves one bold decision. The desire to leave is the reminder that your life is still yours, that you are still capable of radical change, that you haven't surrendered completely to routine, and that somewhere inside you, there is still a version of yourself that refuses to die quietly. But here's the key. Leaving is not always about going somewhere else. Sometimes leaving is about shedding something, an identity, a belief, a relationship, a dream that no longer fits. Sometimes the real escape isn't from a place, but from a story. The story others wrote for you, the story you've outgrown, the story that keeps you small. And rewriting that story often begins with a single question. What would my life look like if I stopped trying to be who I'm expected to be? For many people, the answer terrifies them. For the brave, it liberates. That question alone can break a lifetime of inertia. It can pull you toward the unknown with a force stronger than fear. And the unknown, despite how frightening it is, has one undeniable quality. It's alive. That's why the urge to leave often feels like a return to life. Not escape, not weakness. A pulse, a stirring, a reminder that somewhere beneath everything you've become, there is still someone waiting to meet the world again. Maybe that's why the urge to leave feels less like running away and more like waking up. It's the moment you realize that the life you're living is too small for the person you're becoming. It's the quiet understanding that you can't keep shrinking yourself just to fit inside the expectations that were handed to you. And this realization doesn't come with fireworks or loud announcements. It comes in silence, in the late hours of the night, in the heavy feeling that sits on your chest, when everything around you seems perfectly fine, yet nothing feels truly alive. The world teaches us to fear change, as if change were the enemy. But the real danger is staying in a place that numbs you. The real threat is living a life that no longer reflects who you are. And deep down, everyone knows this. Everyone has felt that internal fracture, that split between the life they have and the life they want. Some ignore it, some bury it, some medicate it, and some finally listen. Listening is the hardest part, because once you hear the truth inside you, pretending becomes impossible. You can't unfeel the suffocation. You can't unknow the possibility of something else. You can't unhear the voice that says, there is more for you than this. That voice is not reckless. It's not irresponsible. It's not childish. It is the most ancient and honest part of you finally speaking. It's the same voice that guided humans across oceans, deserts, and mountains long before maps existed. It's the voice that built civilizations, discovered continents, and pushed us beyond every boundary placed in our way. The desire to leave everything behind is not the death of your life. It is the birthplace of a new one. It is the soul's way of clearing space. It is the instinct that tells you you're not done yet, not with the world and not with yourself. But leaving doesn't always mean walking away forever. Sometimes leaving is simply the act of stepping outside the noise long enough to hear your own mind again. Sometimes it's taking distance, just to remember what matters. Sometimes it's taking a break from being who everyone expects you to be. And sometimes, like Thoreau, leaving is the only way to return with a clearer, stronger, more deliberate sense of who you are. Because that's what leaving really gives you: perspective. When you step away, even briefly, the shape of your life becomes visible. Your patterns become obvious. Your desires become clearer. You recognize which parts of your life are real and which parts you inherited without thinking. You learn what should stay and what needs to be released. You discover which version of yourself you want to carry forward. And that clarity is something no routine, no comfort zone, no familiar environment can ever give you. The world is bigger than the orbit you've been trapped inside, and you are bigger than the identity you've been repeating. Leaving is not about rejecting your past. It's about refusing to let your past define all your future paths. It's about remembering that you are allowed to rewrite your story at any moment. You are allowed to walk away from versions of yourself that were built out of fear, obligation, or survival. You are allowed to become someone new. You are allowed to choose again. And maybe that's the real truth beneath all of this. The desire to leave is really the desire to live. Not just exist, not just function, but live fully, consciously, intentionally. It's the recognition that you only get one life, and you cannot spend it trapped inside a story that suffocates you. You are not a tree. You are not rooted to one identity, one city, one path, one destiny. You are allowed to move, to transform, to expand, to return to yourself. And if you feel this desire burning in your chest, if you feel that restlessness that won't let you pretend anymore, understand this. Nothing is wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are awakening. The urge to leave everything behind is not a flaw in your design. It is proof you are still alive enough to want more, alive enough to imagine more, alive enough to change. And that, by itself, is a miracle. You don't have to leave forever. You don't have to burn your life to the ground. You don't have to disappear. But you do have to listen to yourself. Because ignoring that voice is how people die while still breathing. Listening to it is how they begin to live. So if you ever feel that pull, that whisper that tells you to step away, to wander, to rediscover yourself, don't treat it as madness. Treat it as truth. Treat it as the oldest form of wisdom inside you. Treat it as the invitation it really is, an invitation to return to what is authentic, to return to what is alive, to return to yourself before the world told you who to be. And if you decide to follow that voice, even just a little, you may finally understand that leaving everything behind was never about escape. It was about coming home.